Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this evening. You have made it to EBHO's candidate forum for Districts 5, 7, and the at-large seats for Oakland City Council. So as we get ready and get settled in for the evening, please type in your name, your affiliations, your pronouns, and tell us what you're looking forward to tonight. Who are you looking forward to hearing from? What's your district? We want to know who's in the room with us. So let's get comfy, and we'll be back in just a moment. So it looks like we have a question. Will this be made available to view at a later date? The answer is yes. We are recording. We are also on Facebook Live. So if you miss any part of this, we'll have it recorded and we'll be sharing it after the event. Thank you so much.
All right, welcome everybody. My name is Dolores Tejada. I am your host for tonight. Thank you for joining us. We are going to get started. So we are very excited to host the second candidates forum. And we want to just make some notes before we hop into the different panels. So first of all, there is closed captioning in English for those of you joining us on Zoom. Also, the captioning should be available on Facebook as well. And there is a link that'll be shared if you want to open closed captioning in a separate window. But if you're in the Zoom window, you can click on the lower panel that says closed captioning and then click on English, and you will be able to have closed captioning that way. So additionally, we invite you, like Kiki said in the welcome, to type in your name, affiliation, and pronouns in the chat box, and feel free to tell us what year was it when you first voted. So I'm Dolores Tejada. I'm the lead organizer at East Bay Housing Organizations. My pronouns are they, them, and the first year that I voted was 2000, was the year 2000. So, and it was a primaries. I remember that, I'm pretty sure, maybe. Okay, so, so thank you again for joining us for the Candidates Forum on Homelessness and Housing. We are proud to co-sponsor this event with St. Mary's Center and Black Cultural Zone. East Bay Housing Organizations, or EPO, is a member-driven organization working to preserve, protect, create affordable housing opportunities for low-income communities in the East Bay by educating, advocating, organizing, and building coalitions. As a 501c3, we do not endorse any candidates, but we are honored to co-host this event with the co-hosting the candidates as an educational opportunity for all of our members and communities. Our first panel will begin shortly. We developed the questions using input from all the co-sponsors and as well as some additional partners and from the community. And we're going to ask candidates where they stand on important housing and houselessness issues. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to introduce themselves and then 90 seconds to respond to the question. As attendees, you can use the chat box to discuss, but we ask that you keep the conversation cordial. And if we have the time, we may jump to a question or two. So please feel free to use the question box feature in order to submit a question. I want to also shout out the EPO team that has collaborated to execute today's webinar, Memberships and Operations Director, Kiki Poe, Communications Manager, Grover Weeman Brown, Census and Campaign Organizer, Damian Scott, and Alex Worth, the Policy Associate, who was doubling as the timekeeper for today's event. So with that, for our candidates, I want to prompt you to pin Alex's video so that you can make sure that you have a good view of him holding up the time cards. He will hold up a card at 15 seconds, and then he will hold up a card at stop. This series is the last one in a series of events centered on voter education that we are doing in September. And we welcome you to visit our website and specifically our elections page so that you can see the videos from the previous events, including last week's Candidates Forum, as well as events on the Measure Z in Alameda County. And the first event that we hosted was what is EBO's slate card in terms of the propositions, and learning more about why EBO is endorsing certain propositions. So now that that is all out of the way, we are going to get started with District 5. And I'm going to ask all the candidates for District 5 to make sure that your camera is on. And again, ask that you make sure that Alex Worth is in view. And for your moderator, it is me. So that's a very easy transition. And the order I'm gonna go in is I'm gonna go in the order in alphabetical order, and then we'll alternate who starts first after that. And here we go. So my first question is actually just introductions. Please introduce yourself and tell us where you stand on housing, tell us your platform on housing. And so for that, I will start with Council Member Noel Gallo.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me first express my appreciation to EBCO. I've worked with you many years and certainly have been supportive of your leadership, and I look forward to continue to work with you. Again, for those of you that don't know me, I grew up here in Oakland, grew up here in East Oakland, raised 3 daughters and a son. They all came out of Fremont High School, Oakland High School, the universities in the neighborhood, UC Berkeley and Stanford. And I myself came out of UC Berkeley School of Business Administration. And when it comes to housing, certainly I know housing in many different ways, having lived as a young man, as a child in Section 8 housing and moving in and out of different homes. And by 9th grade, I started living with different families. So when it comes to housing, for me, it's a priority. And certainly when you look at District 5, there are many housing opportunities, affordability that I have worked with directly. You have the Unity Council that's on the Phase 2 development that's going to be occurring soon. And then you also have the Native American Health Center that's creating another 110 units of affordable housing. And I'm currently working with Agnes Memorial, which is right there on International and Miller Street, and we're already have received the entitlements to create additional senior housing, so that entire block on International Miller that's owned by Agnes Memorial will be one day, hopefully in a year soon, more senior housing that'll be made available to get some of our people off the streets, especially grandma and grandpa that I see living in their cars.
Thank you. Your time's up.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next I will go to Zoe Lopez Moraz.
Hi, hola, bienvenidos. My name is Zoe Lopez Meraz. Housing is incredibly important to me. I grew up moving every year of my life all across the United States due to job insecurity, living with a single mother, and her being unable to afford rent. And that was, decades ago, and that's only exacerbated to today. But I'm very fortunate to now, as an adult, be stably housed and have been able to receive an education in biochemistry and molecular biology that has really solidified my beliefs in public housing and public health, and understanding how housing is public health and the cross-section of that, and how we can work at the local and city and state level to accomplish that for everyone. The city of Oakland has a lot of work ahead of it. We have 4 empty units for every 1 homeless person in Oakland right now. And the only thing stopping people from being housed is greed and the lack of accountability. I'm very excited to be a candidate who has a housing priority in their platform. I do extensive community outreach in the homeless communities. Many days a week, I'm out there distributing food, water, hygiene items, basic first aid, and building tiny houses at various encampments in the East Bay. And I'm very excited to be here and thankful to have a roof over my head. Thank you.
Next, Richard Raya.
Hey there, thank you. And thanks for the chance to speak here tonight and to learn from all the wisdom and talent here tonight as well. My name is Richard Santos Raya. I am a product of Oakland. I moved here when I was very, very young. I lived in Fruitvale, then in Diamond, and then by the lake, and then in District 1. And so I've seen sort of the many different faces of Oakland and the many different ways in which one can be housed in Oakland. I think it's time to really recognize that housing is a human right, right? We live in the wealthiest state in the wealthiest nation on the planet. There's no reason that we should have people going unsheltered except for mismanagement of resources and intentional greed and speculation that treat housing as something to be profited off of. So I think it's time to really formalize the progressive values that we have in Oakland, or that we want to have, formalize those in an official document, that being the budget. So I'm excited to take the legal training I have, the creative skills that I have, the loyalty and love that I have for this neighborhood, and sort of act as an ambassador and a champion for big, bold, new ideas that are going to help us permanently give permanent solutions to homelessness, as opposed to patchwork band-aids that have only seen those problems exacerbated over the last 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we'll hop into our first question, which is about the right to housing. Everybody needs a place to call home, but for too many people, the private market is failing to meet that need. So do you believe that housing is a human right? And what does that mean to you, especially in Oakland? And for this question, we'll start with Ms. Lopez Moraz.
I absolutely agree that housing is a human right. And unfortunately, the city of Oakland hasn't responded that they also believe that that is true. The UN released a report a couple of years ago saying that Oakland is the #1 city in the United States and how inhumanely they treat the homeless population. Not only do we keep thousands of people out of all of the empty units that we have, but the policies that's actually being proposed in the city council right now further demonizes and criminalizes the homeless community. The policy that's going up for a vote soon is saying that you can't have any encampments within, I think it's 50 feet of a residence, 125 feet. There's a lot of requirements in that policy that pushes people out and doesn't tell them where they can go. We need housing for everyone, and that needs to be respectable housing with access to water and power. And yes, thank you.
Thanks. And next we'll go to Mr. Raya.
Hey there. Yeah. So as I actually mentioned, I do believe housing is a human right. And I think I and Zoe really benefit from kind of the era in which we came up and the political figures we've had a chance to look up to. It's 2020. Things like socialism are no longer a dirty word, right? We can speak proudly of an America and an Oakland specifically that houses all of its people, provides the basic necessities for all its people. And we don't need to operate from a place of scarcity or austerity or sort of impugning laziness or cultural deficiencies onto our own constituents. It's time to just really honor that right and get out. Just being good enough in line with the rest of the country shouldn't be good enough. We should be Oakland. We should be a shining example of what progressive values can achieve. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Gallo.
Yes, thank you. And I think that, I do believe that housing is a human right. And certainly I've advocated for housing. We're even working with EPCO. But there's some realities that we have here in Oakland that we didn't have last year and the year before. The homeless population has grown dramatically. It went from 1,000 to 4,000, now to 8,000 people that are here on the streets of Oakland. Yes, a number that I went to school there on certain encampments but yet I also have many, many, many people coming to the city of Oakland. But we also need to respect the resident that's trying to raise their children and families. Specifically, when it comes to school sites, we need to be able to make sure we respect that property, as well as not interfere with the children being able to walk from home to the school. And because some of us that are on the street are involved in the gang, not just the drug activity. And so we need to respect that. I'm out there every Saturday and Sunday making sure that it's a clean, safe environment for all of us, including the families and those that have come onto our streets. And so I think we need to be respectful.
Thank you. Your time is up. Great. Now we're going to hop into a question about COVID and evictions. We're in this historic moment right now that most of us have not faced before, and we have to think about what that means for Oakland and for District 5. So with that in mind, thousands of Oakland renters have lost their incomes due to COVID and the resulting economic crisis, leaving them unable to pay rent. State and local bans on evictions won't last forever, and tenant debt is rising. This puts these households at risk for eviction and creates economic hardship for small owners and affordable housing providers. What policies will you support to provide stability and security for tenants and housing providers? Sorry, we're gonna go ahead and start with Richard for this one.
Thought so. Was just waiting to get authorized. Yeah. Yeah. COVID has really laid bare the structural inequities of our society and highlighted the existing fractures and sort of pressure points in our housing landscape specifically. I am thankful for an eviction moratorium, but what that has created is sort of a proverbial, like the sword of Damocles, right? It's a sword hanging over people's head on a string, and it hasn't fallen yet, but it will. So we need to go above and beyond simply kicking the can down the road when it comes to rent. We need to go for rent forgiveness, debt forgiveness, mortgage abatement, and we need to really become advocates of our own people as to where that money is going to come from. Yes, Oakland is strapped for cash, but the county has a lot of money in reserves. The state is obviously a source of funding. And even the many corporations around here in the Bay Area could potentially help ease the burden of something that no one should be forced to pay due to the unprecedented circumstances of COVID.
Thank you. We will go to Councilmember Gallo.
Yeah, thank you. When it comes to I was one of the supporters of the rent moratorium that we currently have to make sure that we continue to stay in our facilities. And secondly, I supported the tenant protection ordinance, the rent control issues, and at the same time, I make sure that Centro Legal received millions of dollars from the city of Oakland to provide tenant protection information and legal representation. And so from my very first year, that's why Centro Legal today has millions of dollars and being able to serve not only the Fruitvale area, but the entire city when it comes to tenant protections. So I'm a strong advocate to making sure, especially at the time that we're in today, that our residents continue to live, continue to stay where they are, and support their children and families. And hopefully we can recover and get back, all of us get back to work. Thank you.
Thank you. And now to Ms. Lopez Meraz.
In regards to the effects of COVID on housing, while a moratorium is a nice Band-Aid, it doesn't do enough. We need to be advocating at the city and the county and the state level for rent and mortgage cancellation. Moving forward, we're facing unprecedented financial repercussions from this. And while we can try and get some funding by defunding OPD and also really advocating for progressive tax models to tax the rich and also get money there, we also need to talk about how to prevent a foreclosure crisis that we saw in 2008 and a land grab from private speculators, and really work toward a public banking model so that we can avoid racist predatory lending and really work toward home ownership, as well as working with organizations like EBHO and the Community Land Trust to really work toward long-term respectable home ownership for everyone. Thank you.
And great. So now the next question, which is on criminalizing people who are houseless. What steps should the city of Oakland take to move from criminalizing homelessness to focusing on housing solutions for unhoused people, including homeless seniors and veterans? And this question comes from St. Mary's Center. And we are going to start with Councilmember Gallo.
Yeah,
Right?
thank you.
No, right? Wait.
Okay. Thank you. When it comes
so.
to, am I on or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. I do appreciate that question. Certainly when it comes to our seniors, I know that challenge extremely well. And certainly I do see grandma and grandpa living in their cars, and we're trying to provide the housing necessary. And I have placed many of our seniors as well as family members that have their children out in the encampment, whether it's in a camper or living off a truck or car. And that has been my priority, to make sure I direct and place them in a housing situation, whether it's a senior home or other homes with Salvation Army or another Christian charities as well. And so those are, an extreme example of how we got to take care of. But then there are other people that are homeless that have serious mental challenges, that are caught up in the drug scene. And we need to, also be able to respond, but respond in a different way, that we provide mental health services, as well as being able to assist those that are caught up in the drug scene, because that's in great numbers.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
And we're going to hop to Zoe.
I want to go a step further. I absolutely support decriminalizing homelessness, but I want to go a step further and decriminalize drugs and sex work as well, because we know that there's a revolving door of crime that keeps people in the criminal system and prevents them from secure housing. And so we really need to talk about the systemic issues that lead people to homelessness and getting stuck in the police line of sight is one of those reasons. Sure, there is trash that builds up, and yes, there's syringes that build up, and other people have the luxury of having a roof over their head and a door to hide the drug use that they perform. But I don't think we can complain about people using drugs on the streets and not provide adequate mental health services, not provide adequate trash services, syringe pickup. The only people I see doing needle exchange and harm reduction are nonprofits. I don't see the city responding in that way. We need to really talk about what gets people into these situations and how to help them out of it, and stop talking about them like they're blight. Thank you.
Thank you. And Richard?
Yeah, I agree with much of what Zoe said. I have had the opportunity to travel for college and for law school. I lived in Chicago, New York, Boston, and Oakland's behind the ball. Other cities already have sort of safe injection sites and really are starting to practice care, not criminalization, care, not incarceration. And however the city interfaces with our homeless population must be in the spirit of care. Hygiene can't look like harassment. And I think currently all too often it does. Cleaning up sometimes gets equated with clearing out, right, in a pretty violent way. So we can avoid this by funding the opportunities to make life more sustainable for people even before they become homeless. Thanks.
Thank you. And to delve deeper into the issues facing our communities, I want to ask a question on hunger, which often connects to people being able to be housed. So what is the most impactful thing that a local leader can do when it comes to responding to the sharp increase in hunger? How will you leverage city infrastructure and assets in your response? And shout out to the Alameda County Community Food Bank who gave us this question. And we are going to start this time with Ms. Lopez Moraz.
That's a great question. And that's actually the first time in this whole time since running this campaign that someone has posed a question about hunger. I know that the Alameda County Food Bank has had notoriously long wait lines, and it's not their fault. They don't have the support that they need, in part because they had to operate with less capacity because of COVID, but in part because we're asking them to distribute food from one location. And so we need to work more with local nonprofits and other volunteer organizations to help these food banks, not only in Alameda County, but other food distributors and local farmers in the area and food distribution organizations to really get the food out there and to drive it into West Oakland, Deep East Oakland, where we know that there's food deserts because we continue to underfund these areas and provide adequate nutritional programs and services. So we need to be partnering more with other organizations and really extending ourselves and what we can offer. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll go over to Mr. Raya.
Yeah, thanks for this question, especially because I think hunger is one of those, people call it like an invisible problem, right? It can happen behind closed doors entirely. Certainly it's impactful for elected officials to engage in volunteering around this issue and create a culture of volunteerism. But the most impactful thing, as always, is through adopting policy that funnels funds towards these issues. One of the things that I talk about a lot on my website and on the campaign trail is turning schools into hubs of support, hubs of health. It's not that different than actually the promise model we've seen in the Mission and in Harlem, where schools are already community outreach posts for for all kinds of services, and in fact already are outposts for certain kind of free meal services in Oakland. Better funding those, making those year-round and more accessible to people, is a great way that we can use existing infrastructure to deliver more resources to people.
And Councilmember Gallo.
Yes, this is something I do on a daily basis. Working with World Central Kitchen, many of the restaurants that are from the Puerto Rican Perla restaurant to the Filipinos to the Huarache Azteca and others that are providing meals not only to the residents. I work directly with the Unity Council where we have these meals program, the library, the Latin American Library. And also every Tuesday morning over at the Acorn Housing, I pick up 400 boxes of the harvest vegetables that I deliver to the Homies organization in East Oakland, the Unity Council, senior centers, and so forth. And so we dedicate a good portion of our time to make sure that our residents, not just only at the street level encampments, but also our seniors. We deliver directly to senior centers here in the Fruitvale area, to make sure that they get their lunch bags as well as some of the food that's provided by a World Central Kitchen. So I work with those directly on a daily basis to make sure that our residents are fed and their children are taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. So now we're gonna hop into a question about public land. So we, in Oakland, one of our important community pieces, something that the community owns, is public land, right? So how would you leverage city-owned land, which if it's city-owned, it means it's people-owned, the people who live in Oakland. How would you leverage city-owned land to support affordable housing? Given the choice, would you prefer to sell lands to raise dedicated funds for housing, or to perhaps follow a model like San Francisco's of providing free ground leases for affordable housing to develop on public property? And for this question, we're gonna start with Mr. Raya.
Thank you. Yeah, so public land is for the public good, right? That's the slogan, and I believe in that wholeheartedly. Public land is for public good and should be reserved for that. So to that end, I don't support selling public land to raise funds, even dedicated funds. I think it's so important that the city, as the entity that has the interest of the people at heart, as opposed to any other stakeholder or corporation which has their own profit at heart, I think it's important for the city to keep their hand on the steering wheel and not sell the land, and instead, as you mentioned in San Francisco, do free ground level leasing for that kind of project. That public land needs to stay safe, dedicated for the public good.
Councilmember Gallo?
Yes, that's something from the beginning of my term on the city council I supported. And I began at one time, the Unity Council was going to sell the property with BART to a developer from New York City, right here at the Fruitvale Transit Village, where you currently have affordable housing. They were going to sell the land and make it a market rate housing project. And I stopped that project to make sure that the land belongs to the public. And we made it affordable housing. So with that effort, we looked at other properties, including with currently the Native American Health Centers building their project with Saha, to make sure that those public lands are used specifically to address the public that we have here in the city of Oakland when it comes to housing. So I'm a strong advocate that if it's public land, it belongs to the public, and if anything, we'll lease the property, but it's got to be developed for the public good. Thank you.
And Ms. Lopez Meraz.
I'm against selling public land, even if it is going to be, you know, a dedicated fund. What we've seen in the city is that they mysteriously lose money that is tied to affordable housing. I do want to take it a step further, and while I do support using public land for a public good like housing, affordable housing developments don't go far enough to really cover the needs of the people of Oakland. And I would love to use public land for public housing. And it's unfortunate that we have a stigma around, you know, saying public housing, and that's because of how we treat low-income people, how we see low-income people in this capitalist society. So I really want to move toward public housing for all and working toward policy that is anti-discrimination for people that try to use subsidized housing vouchers. But we really need to start making housing actually affordable and not just put the name on it and still exclude so many people. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we are going to go to our last question, which is about funding and the city budget. Local funding for affordable housing has been substantially reduced ever since the loss of redevelopment funds in 2012. What new sources would you pursue to create a permanent funding stream for affordable housing? Would you support reducing a portion of the Oakland Police Department budget and reallocating those funds for the construction and preservation of affordable housing in Oakland? And with this one, we are going to start with Noel.
Okay, well, thank you. I do agree. I do agree that we need to strengthen, as an example, right now we have approved through the housing program, we approved 3 agencies. One is the Unity Council for its development, one in West Oakland and one in East Oakland. But yet the Native American Center to build their, with SAHA to build their affordable housing was 2 points away from making that cutoff. And so we need to expand the funding source, working with the state level, as well as other foundations. And certainly the Housing Authority with the federal government needs to expand their support. So we are currently in cooperation from the county, the state, and the federal government for additional funding so we can expedite the permitting process and the development process to provide housing for the people here in Oakland. So we're currently working on that. Thank you.
And Ms. Lopez Meraz.
I absolutely support defunding OPD at least 50% to acquire $132 million. It could go toward housing opportunities, as well as taxing the rich. We are missing out on $40 million a year at least by not progressively taxing at a structured tax model. So those are 2 ways where we could get funding to try and compensate for how much our government continues to devalue housing as a human right. I would also like to increase vacancy taxes for speculators and try and work toward making a monthly tax instead of annually, and dedicating that funding to housing opportunities and working toward housing access and ownership for everyone. Thank you.
And Mr. Raya.
Yeah, hi. I think the genesis of this campaign was a commitment to substantially defund OPD, at least by 50% in the short term, and potentially further as we continue to reimagine public safety and what actually affects justice in our communities. And yes, so through defunding OPD, we can find dedicated revenue for housing that could be reallocated into housing. I also support and would have agreed to pass or vote for the progressive business tax that was up earlier this summer. And yeah, I think that this needs to become one of our top policy priorities, just as urgently as the police need to be one of our waning priorities. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all the candidates for such robust and thoughtful answers. That concludes this portion, the District 5 panel. And again, thank you very much on behalf of EBHO, our co-sponsors, and the community for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks a
everyone.
bunch. Thank you.
Great. And now we are going to move very quickly into the forum, the panel for District 7. So with that, I want to ask the District 7 panelists that are waiting in the wings to please turn your cameras on so we can see you. And as that is happening, I see lots of folks on, and I see our moderator on. I think Miss Reed, I see you. If you can turn your, or I don't see you yet, I should say. If you can please turn your camera on. Mr. Clay as well.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there we go. Okay, I think there's two. All right. And it looks like, who else do we have on? It looks like we have two of the candidates on. We did invite all candidates and we are set to start. We have a tight agenda, as I said. So with that, I am going to toss it over to, oh, okay. I see Marshawn as listed in the attendees. Damien, our tech person, if you can please promote him to a panelist, and then also look in the panelist list for Marcy Hodge. I did see Mr. Jackson on earlier, so Mr. Jackson should be promoted again to a panelist. Thank you for bearing with us during this tech piece, this transition piece. I see Marshawn, I see Ms. Reed, and we're waiting for Mr. Jackson and Ms. Hodge. I'm gonna just toss it over and we can start with who is here and on time. So thank you for being here, to our candidates, and a very excited welcome to our moderator for this evening, who is the Director of Community and Political Engagement and an amazing co-collaborator, co-schemer to EBHO and to the work that I do, John Jones III. John, take it away.
Thank you for that warm and gracious opening, Dolores. My name is John Jones III, and before we begin, I just want to share D7 has a special place in my heart. That's the district I grew up in. So I'm excited to see all the candidates running for office. And as a reminder, all the candidates have been apprised of how this is going to go. And I just want to offer as a friendly reminder, I know in D7 specifically, there's a tendency to want to run stop signs. Please, let's model, let us be the change that we seek. So please pay attention to the timekeeper. Alice is going to let you know, but we will offer folks an additional time as a wrap up. So with that being said, before we begin, I still want to give one more minute. We're waiting for Bishop Bob to join.
Let me see, Damien, do you see him? He was on earlier, so I know he's here. If I can get some additional support from perhaps Kiki or Grover, thank you for doing that pause. And actually, I will use this pause to just reiterate for the candidates, if you can pin by clicking the 3 dots in the corner of Alex's video and pin, yeah, there you go, pin the Alex's video so you will be able to see when he's holding up that 15-second and the stop time. So we are checking our list, but John, Mr. Jones, please go ahead and get started.
Yes, absolutely. The first question. Everybody needs a place to call home, but for too many people, the private market is failing to meet that need. Do you believe that housing is a human right? And what does that mean to you, especially in Oakland? So I want to start with Aaron.
Absolutely, housing is a human right. I think that everybody has the right to have some place where they can sleep and be protected from the elements, especially in a time like this where our air is toxic. everybody has the right to be able to, store and cook food for themselves and their family, and to be able to use the bathroom and clean themselves with some dignity. And that's one of the premises of my platform, is that we need housing for everyone in the district without fail. And I think that, it's not an easy task, and it's going to take some complex solutions, and I'm the right person for it, because this is the space that I've been working in for most of my career, providing housing for underserved communities through keeping people in their houses first and foremost. That's one of the most important things. And I was a foreclosure attorney. I was a real estate attorney. I did affordable housing development, economic development, representing cities and counties. And I think that has to be a priority of keeping people in their houses, in their homes.
Okay, thank you for that. And next, we're going to go to Treva with the same questions.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I absolutely believe that housing is a human right. It is something that we should be obligated to ensure in protecting and prioritizing and preserving the lives of all of our residents. As it's been said, we live in one of the most expensive cities in this nation, and too many of us in Oakland have been displaced as housing prices and rents have soared, wages have remained stagnant. People are spending well over the 30% of their income that they believe should be spent on rent and mortgage, and people are cost burdened. People have lost jobs in the midst of COVID-19. People are trying to make ends meet and are struggling. And so we've got to ensure that everyone has the security and the stability of a home. I grew up with housing instability, and I faced housing instability as an adult. And it is our responsibility to ensure that we protect that stability for our homeowners, those who are unhoused, and for all of us who are even housed, to ensure that we stay permanently housed. The majority of those we know who are unhoused in this city are 70% Black, and we need to prioritize ensuring that those who've been most vulnerable and impacted have housing.
Okay, thank you. And now we're going to move on to Marshawn.
How you doing, John? Thank you for moderating this. Absolutely, housing is a human right, and the rent is too damn high. Look, I housed the homeless. I ran an emergency winter warming shelter. I was out there doing a point in time count where we counted over 4,000 people outside sleeping in the elements. It's ridiculous being in a city that's so rich with resources that we're even talking about this issue. And when I ran for mayor of Oakland in 2018, this was my platform piece, and this still is my platform piece. And I was actually out there making a difference when it came to making sure we had a roof over people's head. Look, we need to get the rents down. If we don't get the rents down, we need to get the income up. If we can't get the income up, we need to start putting people over profit. It's that simple. We need to make sure people have a roof over their head and dignity so they won't be sleeping in the elements. You know, I housed over 200 families and provided over 1,000 beds when I ran a winter warming shelter. I know what to do, and I will get the job done because I did it before. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. And I realized that we should have opened up with the 90 seconds opening remarks from each and every one of you. But I'm glad we went in this order because it's so important to frame not just the current mode we in, but the whole point and purpose of this. So I'm gonna bounce it back to you, Marshawn, with your opening remarks.
Thank you, John. Appreciate it. Look, I'm a family man, a married man with 2 kids. I lived through and managed to survive these very same issues I'm trying to fix today. The drugs, the violence, the displacement of Blacks. Over 70% of our Blacks sleep in our sty homeless. The inequities due to systemic racism. Look, I went through all Oakland public schooling, graduating from Castlemont High School. What allowed for my growth, I was able to get outside of Oakland on a football scholarship to the University of Tulsa, graduating with a degree in political science and eventually earning a master's in public administration. For almost 20 years, I worked to lift up the community, including over 2 decades as a volunteer at the Ira Jenkins Brookfield Recreation Center, in which my dad been working there for 30 plus years. He's a City of Oakland employee with 40 plus years under his belt. So I know about community. I know about helping the community. And I know about living through the issues to try to survive Oakland. As you all know, we can be a casualty of our environment. Many of our friends and families have been lost in Oakland. So we need to make sure that we have an opportunity for them. My platform is reforming OPD, eliminating homelessness, creating affordable housing, eliminating homicide, and bringing sound and solid, equitable economic development and opportunity to the residents of D7. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Now I'm going to go to Treva with the same opportunity for your opening remarks.
Hi, thank you, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Treva Reed. I'm an overcomer, an advocate, and community leader, and I'm running to lead transformative and sustained change in East Oakland, ensuring that we are housed in our community. I was primarily raised by my mom, a retired public school teacher, in a family of small business owners, civil servants, laborers, all with a deep respect for hard work and activism. I grew resilient, overcoming family crisis at an early age, childhood trauma, housing, and school instability. Growing up, living 10 to 20 of us in a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, sleeping on the floor, sleeping on couches or the comfort of a cousin's bedroom until I was able to get my own room in 11th grade. I again faced housing instability as an adult, sharing a bed with my daughter here in Oakland for 4 years in East Oakland, making too much for low-income housing and too little for market rate. I understand that weight, and I fight now to protect, preserve, and prioritizing housing solutions for our families. I serve on the board of SAHA and have worked for Nancy Skinner while in the state assembly, advocating for housing policies, funding, and solutions that benefited Oaklanders. I fight for equitable and just outcomes for families like mine, who've also endured the deep trauma of losing loved ones to gun violence, food insecurity, unemployment, domestic abuse, mental health care, seeking living wage jobs, and keeping their business doors open. And so I champion those issues, serving with over 10 organizations like EOYDC, BWAPA, Youth Alive. I co-founded Triumphant Women, where we work in partnerships with orgs like Oakland Elizabeth House and Wardrobe for Opportunity to help women like me, single mothers, thrive with the village of support around them and housed. I hope that you will join me in moving East Oakland forward.
Thank you so very much. Now I'm going to move to Mr. Clay.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Aaron Clay. I'm a candidate for Oakland City Council for District 7. I was raised and educated in Oakland Public Schools. I graduated from Morehouse College and attended Loyola University Chicago School of Law. Housing is a priority for me and one of the primary reasons that I'm running for Oakland City Council. I grew up learning how inadequate housing affected not only individual families, but our community as a whole. My father was a pioneer in affordable housing finance, and I grew up attending ribbon cuttings and seeing the excitement of everyday people knowing they were about to move into a clean, healthy, safe residence of their own. I went to law school with the goal of developing affordable housing, concentrating on tax and real estate. But when I graduated, the affordable housing tax credits were drying up. So I became the community lawyer for the community. I turned to the needs of the community. I became the attorney that helped keep people in their homes. I fought banks against foreclosures. I defended tenants against illegal evictions, and I represented cities and counties developing multi-million-dollar economic development proposals for federal tax credit applications. As someone who has fought to keep families in their homes, to create long-term housing solutions, I am uniquely qualified to usher District 7 out of an ongoing housing crisis. My goal is to change East Oakland into a safe, vibrant, healthy community by prioritizing housing for all residents, creating a strong economic job base, and community health. I'm the progressive candidate who has the vision, the experience, and the courage to create real change. And this is the type of representation we need in District 7. We are better together, and I thank you for your support.
Okay, thank you all. The next question is coming to us from the Black Cultural Zone. Now that we are in this pandemic and moment of unrest, what do you think are the priorities to support the Black community? I want to go to Mr. Tapman first.
This is big, and this is also a part of my platform. One of the biggest things that we can do as a city, and I can do as a council member, is support entrepreneurship, business opportunity, give people to take their dreams and ideas and turn them into reality. Making sure that we had a funding available, resources, low interest rate loans, no interest rate loans in some cases, grants, streamlining permit processing so people can get their business off the ground. On another hand is we need to make sure that resources trickle down. And I don't believe in an economic trickle down effect. I believe in a trickle up effect. But in this case, we need stuff to come from DC. Look, I'm a government affairs manager for the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. I'm with the coalitions with all food banks. We work closely with Alameda County Community Food Bank. Everybody over there know who I am. We need to make sure that we push for federal policy and resources and funding, similar to what we just seen with Nancy Pelosi and the bipartisan support that broke yesterday as some relief coming to us, if it can get past the Senate.
Okay, thank you. We want to go to Treva Reed, the same question.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I work in partnership, fortunately, with the Black Cultural Zone. And we've lifted up a number of initiatives that I stand with and speaking to today in ensuring that in the midst of COVID-19 that has exacerbated the issues within the Black community more than we know that we have faced with some of the greatest disparities across the board, is to make sure that we have economic funding to ensure anti-displacement, not just for housing, but anti-displacement funding for our small businesses. And one of the things that we lifted up was ensuring that we have a $100 million community nonprofit grant that can be targeted to the Black community and certainly other communities of color, with a common application for individuals, businesses, artists, and entrepreneurs, making sure that we've got the technical assistance, making sure that we've removed barriers that would have impacted us from being able to secure those grants and that funding. As the federal dollars rolled out, many of us were shut out of that process. And so we've got to ensure that we've got local mechanisms to keep our small businesses doors open and to ensure that we keep our Black community housed. 70% of us are unhoused. The majority of those are also Black men. So I have lifted up initiatives and have stood with the Fair Chance Housing Coalition to make sure that we also address the barriers of access for everyone to have the housing that they deserve. Ensuring that we've got community resilience with financial empowerment, banking services for those who are unbanked and underserved, and making sure that we provide mutual aid support to our businesses and our Black community who have struggled greatly in the midst of COVID. And I can drop a link to other initiatives that we lifted up in partnership with the Black Cultural Zone, BWAPA, and Greenlining in the chat if that's.
I want to say, I don't want to be rude to interrupt. I want to thank you, but as a reminder, I want us all to pay heed to our timekeeper, because I want to keep this a fair process. Aaron Clay, the same questions for you.
Yeah, so, and thank you for the question, because I think this is something we're not talking enough about. COVID is infecting and killing Black people at disproportionately high rates. And it's because of the deep-seated inequalities we have in our social and community that have been going on for decades. And we need to change that. We're more at risk because we work the essential jobs and we can't do the teleworking and we have to use public transportation. We're at increased risk because we have pre-existing health conditions such as diabetes and asthma. And we're more likely to live in housing situations that are like multi-generational or low income that makes it difficult to social distance or self-isolate. So we have to address this and we have to have some urgency about it. And so one of the things that I would do is we need to create a healthier, stronger, more sustainable community from within. We need to increase our small business capacity, whether it be the reserves and the legal side, create real estate equity partnerships. We need to improve our community health and increase our preventive health through partnerships with our nonprofits, and we need to strengthen our nonprofits. Thank you.
The next question is a follow-up question, also coming from the Black Cultural Zone. Are you aware that all of the voting drop-off boxes in East Oakland are pending and not improved sites? What will you do to help get out the Black vote? And we're going to stay with you, Aaron, on this question as well.
You know, during this time, voting is so important. And if we don't know that by now, with all the things that have happened in the past 4 years, and the things that haven't happened that have affected us. I mean, it's literally a life and death situation. So as candidates, I think all of us, that should be part of all of our platform as we go out and we try to do outreach, that we're trying to encourage people to vote. The get out the vote, you know, usually sort of at that last time period before the election, but it needs to be all year round that we, you know, telling people your vote does matter. And that was one of the things that I really noticed when I got started with this campaign. People said they'd signed my petition, but they weren't going to vote because it doesn't matter. And so one of my primary premises is that we need to re-engage our community. We need to ask them, what is the vision that you see for your community? And then let's create that vision. Right now, they don't believe it. They don't have they're not engaged because they don't see anybody working for them or listening to them. And we absolutely have to change that and say, we want to listen to you and we want to know what you want and then create that reality.
Okay, we're going to go to Marshawn Tapman with the same question.
First off, we need to have a blind eye to race. We need to have a blind eye to neighborhoods. We need to address, we need to engage, and we need to go after everybody. We need to go to the spots where most politicians don't go, like the Starbucks over there off the Hagenberger, where people don't go, politicians. We need to go into the Brookfields, the Sobranis. Look, my campaign has been doing this forever. We've been everywhere. Out of the 14,000 households in D7, I think we probably somewhere near 7,000 to 8,000 already hit. And keep in mind, I came back into this campaign in July. So we just hit the ground running. We need to make sure that we hit the youngsters out there hanging in front of the store. We need to hit the older crowd to make sure that they're still registered to vote. Remember, there's been a voting suppression effort where they've been kicking people off the roster. We need to make sure people is checking their status to make sure that they're still registered to vote so we can have them go out there and vote. And we need to make sure we do that to everybody.
Thank you. Trevor Reed, the same question is for you as well.
Yes, voting is an issue. In our district, a third of us in District 7 are not registered to vote. And that is disheartening. And so I have participated, I am participating with the Oakland Votes Collaborative. It's made up of a number of community-based organizations that come together collectively to address the issue that we have around the lack of drop boxes, the issues that we see surmounting with voter suppression before us. We're working with senior groups. We're working with churches. We're working with nonprofit organizations. We're doing door knocking. We're dropping door hangers, not door knocking. We're dropping door hangers and working with even youth-based organizations to help them engage with getting out the vote, and not just getting out the vote, but also getting out the census count as we come into the last days of the census. Our vote is powerful and our census dollars are greatly needed. We don't have enough drop boxes. It is a shame that we only have, I believe, 8 approved and that the county has gone from 600 to 100 throughout the entire county. It is a concern, and we're doing everything we can to ensure people are aware of the new voting opportunities at Roots and soon to come at Allen Temple Baptist Church. We're hoping that they can come out of pending status soon.
Okay, thank you so very much. As a result of the verdict relating to Breonna Taylor, it's left many people in this country hungry for justice. But we know that there are D7 residents who are hungry for food. What is the most impactful thing a local leader can do when it comes to responding to the sharp increase in hunger? How will you leverage city infrastructure and assets in your response? This question is from the Alameda County Community Food Bank, and we're going to begin with Trevor Reed.
Hunger, just like housing is a human right, hunger is a human right. We need more funding at all levels of government to support providing healthy, nutritious food, food services and grocery stores, community farming on public land in our district. All of us have a responsibility to ensure that those needs are met, and we can better utilize city facilities. I know right now the East Oakland Senior Center is a great place that I participate and volunteer with in partnership with Alameda County Food Bank. We can increase our partnerships in satellite locations through Alameda County Food Bank. I serve at one of their largest food distributors, my church, Shiloh Church. We are known for showing up and showing up strong, serving thousands in our community with compassionate food security care. I believe that we need to continue to work with programs like Allen Temple arms through the Mercy Brown Bag, Meals on Wheels. I contribute a lot of charitable dollars into Meals on Wheels through my professional role, as well as I do with Alameda County Food Bank. Growing Together Produce, funded by the city and Alameda County, are a number of other programs, and all in.
Okay, thank you. Now we're moving to Aaron Clay. Same question for you.
Yes, I mean, our food scarcity is just one of the issues that's sort of being highlighted by the COVID-19, and I want to thank the Black Cultural Zone for their food giveaway. Hot food is so important. It does more than just feed you, but it also provides morale, because hunger is something that affects a lot of people, especially in District 7. So their food giveaway on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays are very important. But saying that, you know, my premise, we need to create more stability as far as sustainability in our community. We need more preventive health. We need more urban community gardens, more farmers markets, more healthy food in our community to sort of help us fight and be more resilient to the things, the trauma and the crisis that are coming and are attacking our community. And so if that involves more partnerships with tech companies, more partnerships with larger funders, social impact funders, it's a space I've been working in for the past 10 years, then we need to do that. And also around community health, we also need more Black doctors. We don't go to the doctor, we don't trust the current situation. We need more Black medical professionals in our community right now.
Marshawn Tapman, same question for you.
Look, it's no surprise where I lie on these issues. When we was dealing with the homeless crisis, I was out there working for the nonprofit housing. We're dealing with a hunger crisis. I work for the San Francisco Marin Food Bank. At the beginning, the onset of COVID, it was us coming together, realizing what we needed to do to help the community, and we immediately started emergency pop-up pantries before any county and city. And personally, I was out there working, serving over 1,200 families a day. This is what I do. I work closely with the Alameda County Community Food Bank. We're all part of the same coalitions, California Hunger Action Committee, CFAB, CAFB. We're all in this together to make sure that we push on our state representatives, our federal officials, to bring back policy that'll help give community like ours resources so we can survive. I made a few connections for people who was out there also with the Alameda County Community Food Bank so they can receive food so they can give it out to the community. This is what I do. I'm a servant leader.
Okay, thank you. I also recognize and acknowledge that Marcy Hodge has joined. So I'm gonna do two things since we're near the end. I first want to also extend to you an opportunity to ask the preceding question, and then as a follow-up to allow you 90 seconds as part of your opening remarks. The question comes from the Alameda County Food Bank. And here's the question. What is the most impactful thing a local leader can do when it comes to responding to the sharp increase in hunger? How will you leverage city infrastructure and assets in your response?
Yes, thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you all. The most important item for me, line item, is money to be allocated, and that it remains a priority for the city of Oakland. You know, anytime that you have a shortage of income, it produces limited resources, and certainly the ability to have the number of hands that you need to get the food out to the different churches and nonprofit agencies who are passing out the food. So the priority would be to ensure that the allocated funds are there to support the overall goals of the food bank.
Thank you. And I also want to give you the opportunity, 90 seconds, to share your opening remarks.
Yes. Well, my name is Dr. Marcy Hodge, and I am a lifelong resident of East Oakland. I attended all of the public schools here, Sobrani Park, King Estates Junior High School, and graduated from Skyline High. I remained here after I graduated from high school because I felt that all of my success was here. I have been able to identify the jewel that Oakland is, and it's one of the reasons why I seeked office in 2004, I believe it was 2004, for the Peralta Community College School Board, where I served 2 terms. There, I wanted to give back to the community that gave back so much to me. And I saw the opening of the Berkeley City College, new Berkeley City College in Berkeley, and the expansions of Laney College, Alameda, and Merritt College. I believe education, vocational programs, and continuing education are primary in the stabilization of our communities. And I seek the office of City Council for District 7 because I see that we are in a state of deterioration. We have a lot of issues that have not been resolved and many challenges that we are faced with that must have someone who is going to fight for District 7. We are a jewel. We have the airport, BART, Coliseum BART Station, Foothill Square, that is in close proximity to Nolan Park. We have so many entities here that we can use the time and effort to really build up East Oakland.
Okay, thank you. We have reached that part of the night where we're at the last question. And it may come as a shock to many of you, but I am a huge sports fan. I don't know why people don't realize that. And the hot topic that relates to D7 is the use of the Oakland Coliseum. The Oakland Coliseum, as we know, is public land with 50% owned by the city. How do you think this land should be used? How would you ensure that the Surplus Land Act is followed there? How will you involve the community in planning and implementing development there? And we'll begin with Aaron Clay.
Great, thank you. So the Coliseum land, it's a community asset. It's a District 7, it's an East Oakland asset, and I think it should be used for the priorities and the needs of the people in the district. I do not think it should be sold. I think it should be developed in a way that benefits the district's, the residents, and we need housing and we need jobs. I am a firm advocate in the green economy and developing a green job base. I think East Oakland is perfect for that. We have lots of industrial land that's zone industrial, that's suitable for light industrial manufacturing, that creates living wage jobs that people here who are currently here in East Oakland can be hired and raise families on here in the district and be able to buy housing and be able to afford housing. And that's the type of thing that we need to be able to use for the land. And I do love my sports teams. I love watching the A's. I love, my Raiders. But, and the land is big enough where we can have multiple sports teams and still provide housing and small businesses with land to develop out an economic base that provides generational wealth. And that's how I think it should be used.
Thank you. We're going to Treva Reed, the same questions.
Yes, I believe it's public land and it should be used for the public good, ensuring that there are equitable housing options and solutions in that incredibly great transit corridor. There are cap and trade funds that we can still utilize, that we've got to ensure that there are strong community benefits, real community benefits that I've negotiated on other properties like the Oakland Army base, that we've got to make sure that there are opportunities for us to develop the land where it's for the benefit and the highest use for our community. Strong community and affordable housing benefits. We've already begun to build around the Coliseum BART station. That's an area that we can look to do more housing development, more economic development to attract more locally owned businesses in that corridor, certainly attract new industries, clean tech industries, STEM-based industries, and other partners to come in and look at our land use policies around mixed use and commercial zones to see what more we can do creatively to ensure that we have more housing options and more economic vitality in those corridors like the Coliseum. And I support the Black-owned businesses that are also looking to pursue opportunities there.
Okay, thank you. Marshawn Tapman, same question for you.
John, we all know you're an avid Warriors fan and a Raiders fan, but I know the Raiders got us a little confused right now. We don't know what to think, but what I do know, what a lot of people think is this area need to be used for community. We need to get a community an opportunity to invest in this land, and we shouldn't sell it for a measly $85 million. The Raiders was paying between $7 and $8 million a year for rent. So you telling me 10 years worth of rent, you'll sell this hundreds of millions of dollars of economic opportunity off to a billionaire family. I don't think that's the route we should go. We should do something like I've been saying again since my 2018 Mayor of Oakland run. None of my platform has changed because nothing has got accomplished throughout the city. And reimagine this area into a Hagenberger tourist zone. where we bring in small businesses, we create thousands of jobs, we create housing, we use the international airport, we create investment opportunities. I've been working closely with the African American sports and entertainment group, Ray Bobbitt. He believed in that dream. He bought into it. We need to give African Americans an opportunity to create that generational wealth. Got it off.
Thank you. And now we want to ask the same question of Dr. Marcy Hodge.
Yes, I would say that the way that things are looking is that we have to paint context to the picture. And what we need to do first is to secure the land. It looks like the county has negotiated their deal and that the city of Oakland, Larry Reed, is in the process of negotiating a deal for this sale. This is a land grab. And East Oakland will lose its true self, the spirit of East Oakland, the community, the diversity, those who have lived here for decades, generations of families will not be able to afford East Oakland if that land is sold. And so I support the protest that will be happening next week that the Oakland Bay Area Democratic Club has put together. I think all of us need to be there to fight this issue because this is very pressing. We cannot sell that land. I have put a phone call into Dan Siegel to see if we can put in an injunction to stop the sale because it just can't happen. It just can't.
Okay, thank you. And it was brought to my attention, we actually have time for one more question. And I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question of you all, specifically as someone that's formerly incarcerated. I've shared my challenges and barriers as it relates to access and housing and employment. And we know D7 is also impacted by over-policing and mass incarceration. So the last question for each and every one of you is, do you believe in the full restoration of the civic and human rights of formerly incarcerated people? And do you quickly have an idea of how you can support this population? So we're going to start with Dr. Hodge.
Yes, I believe in getting as much feedback as I can because I've never been to jail and I've never had to shift my life into, coming from being incarcerated to being introduced to a community that you haven't been a part of for whatever that time frame is. So I think it's important. Housing, of course, is very important. Employment. I know that as a business owner, it is very difficult for me to hire people because they have to have fingerprint checks. And for people who clearly have a great desire to serve, the developmentally disabled, I'm not able to get them processed or cleared or, to receive an exception to work for me. And so there are many things that we need to do. We need to break the chains of just outside incarceration where people can't be employed, where people can't get stabilized into the community. And it creates a lot of different challenges. So whatever it is that I can support, I certainly am a proponent for it.
Hey, thank you. We want to go to Marshawn Tapman.
John, I know, you've been incarcerated. You came home strong. My family has experienced incarceration. They trying to be strong, but it's a lot of barriers put in place due to that. I think one of the first things we need to do to help restore dignity is we need to pass Proposition 17, which will actually restore the right for people who are felons and currently on paperwork. And that's how we talk about it, John. People being on paperwork where it'll give them the opportunity to vote. Their voice matter, their vote matter. And this a start because now they can start voting on things that'll help benefit them and move them in a direction where they can move forward. Whatever I need to do to support this, I'm down and able and been doing it my entire life, from writing letters, character letters, writing letters of references so people can get employed when something come back on their background check. I'm all for it, man. We need to move forward and we need to give people who came home after serving their time an opportunity to move their life forward.
Okay, thank you. Treva Reed, same question for you.
Absolutely. The deeply systemic, racist, unjust justice system that is before us, I continue to stand and fight with those who are formerly incarcerated and incarcerated against that injustice. Standing with my daughter, standing with my brother, standing with my daughter's father growing up who was incarcerated most of her life. I served on Alameda County's joint one table committee where I helped to develop the first and historic re-entry strategic plans for adults returning back home. I served as the co-chair for the Family Reunification and Stability Committee, and I still fight and advocate as I serve with Youth Alive on their advocacy committee, as I support the Fair Chancing Housing Coalition and have stood up to fight to ensure that those barriers are removed, as I support All of Us Are None and a number of other community-based organizations, and as a state policy advisor for BWAPA, Black Women Organized for Political Action. I support, I fight for, I advocate, and I challenge the unjust system that has stood against our brothers and sisters for far too long to make sure that they have the equity and the humanity that they deserve as our neighbors and our citizens and our family members.
Okay, thank you. And Aaron Clay, same question for you as well.
So absolutely, I support the rights for formerly incarcerated individuals to have all of their rights. They've served their time, they've done their due, and that's the only fair and humane thing. But beyond that, we have to remember that a lot of them were criminalized, incarcerated due to our war on drugs, which the whole purpose of it was to criminalize Black people. So knowing that, we have to figure out ways that we can create structures in our community to reverse all of those negative actions that occurred because of the war on drugs. And even going back to segregation, redlining, and even back to slavery, we need to start strengthening our communities for all of our residents. Stop discriminating against people who are without shelter. A large part of our, a significant part of our unsheltered people are people who are formerly incarcerated. And we can't keep criminalizing people for things that they may or may not have done. So I absolutely support bringing them home into community and treating them as such.
I'd like to thank you all. Once again, my name is John Jones III. I wish you, your family members, and your loved ones well. And on behalf of D7 residents and the city at large, thank you all for your time, your service, and your commitment to the community. Take care. And on that note, I hand it back over to Dolores.
Thank you so much, John, for the great moderation. Thank you to all of the panelists who joined us. We are now going to transition to our final panel for the night, which is the at-large seat. So with that, I would like to prompt all of our candidates and our moderator to turn their cameras on. And there we go. And as a reminder, or as a notice to our candidates, if you can please pin Alex Worth, who is our timekeeper. If you pin his video, you'll be able to keep track of, yeah, click on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner and select pin video so that you can follow when he notifies you that you have 15 seconds and then that you have to stop. So we're gonna start with, before I introduce the moderator, I wanna just remind the candidates that there is going to be a 90-second introduction, and then there will be a 60-second response window. And with that, I want to toss it over to our moderator for the last panel, Noni Session, Director of East Bay Permanent Real Estate Cooperative. Take it away, Noni.
Thank you so much, Dolores. And thank you, EBHO, for all of the work you do in this field to keep our community secure. And I want to thank the 3 candidates for taking time out tonight to discuss some of the most pertinent issues happening in our city today. I want to begin by mentioning and introducing our 3 candidates. Derek Johnson. Hi, Council Member Rebecca Kaplan. Hi. And Nancy Sidebotham. Hi, Nancy. How are you? And each of you, in the order on my screen, will have the opportunity to take a minute and a half and introduce yourself. I'll give you my apologies now that I will have to unfortunately interrupt you if you exceed your timing that Alex Worth will be showing you on his screen. So Derek, let's hear a little bit about yourself and give us a sense of your housing platform for the at-large seat in Oakland.
Well, sure. Well, thank you. And just go on and just interrupt me because I'm having some computer difficulties. It keeps freezing. And so I feel if I touch something, it's going to freeze again. So just let me know when my time is up. So thank you, first of all, for having me this evening. I appreciate being here and you all listening to me and getting to know me. You know, these are some uniquely challenging times. I'm running for the Oakland City Council at large because this unique moment demands a different kind of leader. We need a council member who understands the struggles of the most vulnerable in our community. I was raised in the West Oakland Acorn housing projects by a single mom who worked 3 jobs just so I can make it, so I understand that all too well. I believe our council member must have a proven ability to transform lives for those who need it most. My Oakland restaurant, Home of Chicken and Waffles, has employed hundreds of Oaklanders over the years, and I'm proud to say up to 70% of those at one time or another have been formerly incarcerated individuals, which I still employ today. I've also helped Oakland and nonprofits, foundations, and the city itself reduce violence, improve job training programs, and provide educational opportunity for low-income youth. Now I'm ready to lead our COVID-19 recovery for Oakland that leaves nobody behind and move us toward a racial and social justice. I'm honored to be endorsed by our next vice president, hopefully, Senator Kamala Harris, our homegirl, Mayor Libby Schaaf, Assemblywoman Buffy Wicks, Brandon Reams from Center of Hope Church, Pastor Joseph Simmons from St. Paul, and many other community and faith-based organizations. Thank you so much for having me this evening.
Thank you. I appreciate your introduction. Next, I'd like to ask the sitting council person, Rebecca Kaplan, to introduce herself and give us a sense of your housing platform.
Thank you so much. Good evening. And it's really a pleasure to be with all of you and to get to talk about these important issues. I'm sorry I can't greet you in person, but I appreciate having this opportunity. It has been my honor to work together with you to fight for housing that is affordable for all Oaklanders. And I would be honored to have your support to continue that fight. That means being willing not only to work to pass legislation for things like affordable housing impact fees, but being willing to fight to bring that back if they're not being implemented and insist on that information being brought forward. That means fighting for and passing a public lands policy to prioritize the use of public land for affordable housing, and then to fight to put out to bid specific parcels of land following the Surplus Lands Act, noticing it to affordable housing nonprofit developers so that we can expand affordable housing. That also means fighting to prevent displacement and recognizing that part of why homelessness has gone up is because more and more people are suffering wrongful evictions, predatory foreclosures, and excessive rent increases. And so providing emergency rent assistance and enforcement of tenant protections are also part of how we provide that vision of protecting housing for our community. I also support land trusts and the right of the community to buy properties that are being offered for auction at the county instead of having those go to flippers. Thank you very much. I'd be honored to continue to work with you on this. Thank you.
Thank you, council member. And last but not least, we have Nancy Sidebotham. Tell us a bit about yourself and a sense of your housing platform for Oakland.
My name is Nancy Sidebotham, and I'm running for the at-large position. I've run before for other positions in the city of Oakland over the years, and I have fought for the rights of residents to have a voice at City Hall, which has been lacking over the long time that I've ever been involved in the politics of Oakland, which goes back to 1982. Oakland has been a city that has been neglected. When I came here, we had fantastic businesses and stores downtown. We had JCPenney's and Mervyn's out here at Eastmont Mall. And now we're technically a wasteland. And now with the virus that's going on right now, it's gotten progressively worse. And if we think that our days tomorrow are going to improve, we have second thoughts on that because it's not going to happen. You're going to have more foreclosures and you're going to have more people being homeless because the economy is not there to continue to sustain us. We need to fight for the residents that are here. We need to sustain the people that are here in Oakland and stop the gentrification that has started under Jerry Brown, that has been continuous since then. And people need to understand that if we don't come together, and as a large council person, that I be the bridge that is going to be working with all the districts to bring them together so that we can bring our city back to us, we are going to continue to have serious problems. We have had over the years other people outside coming into Oakland and running Oakland behind the scenes, and this has got to stop. The money comes in, but it leaves with these people, and Oakland pays the big penalty for all of this. When it comes to housing, yes, we need, thank you.
I appreciate it. I'm going to start from the bottom instead of from the top and ask a really pertinent question that Nancy opened for us. And I will begin with you, Councilmember Kaplan. And I'm asking for a specific response here. Now that we are in this pandemic and the moment of unrest, what do you think are the specific policy priorities to support the Black community?
Yes, I think it is incredibly important to continue to fight for specific support, including grants for local small businesses, including funding to support people who have been displaced from their jobs. We're right now also advocating to provide more money for our job programs, including job matching and job training, because many people are being displaced from pre-existing jobs. But it also means it's more important than ever that we ensure that the contracts that the city enters into, the contracts with real estate projects that the city is involved in, provide equitable access to our community. The underrepresentation of the Black community in those contracts is really harmful. And with the city being one entity that is still functioning, it's all the more important. So we're fighting to bring that disparity study back to council and to insist that we affirmatively act to ensure justice in how those funds are given out.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Nancy, same question goes to you. What do you think are what are the specific policy priorities for you to support the Black community?
Specific policies are that we have money coming into Oakland, and it is not dispersed equally across all the districts in Oakland. We have most of the money downtown at the expense of, and North Oakland at the expense of East and West Oakland. West Oakland is now continuing to grow. It has its problems, but because of the infill of people coming from San Francisco and going into West Oakland, that is changing over there. And the last holdout is East Oakland. And with all the ordinances that have been passed in the last couple of years, it is now starting to hurt the Black community. And it is forcing people to leave because they cannot hold on to their properties because they are being charged property taxes. We have the highest property taxes in the state of California that is pushing people out of here. How do we change that? Where is the money going to come from? Like I said, this is a pandemic that has changed everything for the future and where we're going. And is the money there? The state of California is hurting with the money that they've been putting out there and the more money that they're going to be putting out from unemployment and stuff. And Oakland is hurting. Even though there's a lot of money coming to Oakland, we have yet to know where that money is hidden and what it's being used for because they aren't hiring staff people. So we know they aren't paying out that way. So where is all the money that's been coming into Oakland that is supposed to be used for housing and for the infrastructure and stuff? We don't know where any of that is, and that's why I'm calling for a full, complete audit of the city of Oakland. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate your response. And finally, Derek Johnson, same question to you. What are the specific policy priorities you would hold to support the Black community?
Well, you know, that's dear and true to my heart because I am the Black community. I'm a member, been a member of this community for 56 years. We need to do more to uplift our own community. Self-determination, self-empowerment are the key to our future. We need to ensure that funding investments in the Black community stay in the Black community to help build up our own neighborhoods. And then when we have legislation like the soda tax, where is that money going? It needs to make sure that it goes into District 3, District 6, District 7, same tax that they're getting all the money from, they're not putting that money back into our community. So we need to do a much more efficient job of making tracking and seeing where that goes. I would also like to see us adopt a financial literacy hub. It's one thing about giving our businesses money, but let's make sure that they get enough money. Let's bring some Black banks to the table, local banks to the table, accountants, lawyers, resources. When white counterparts go to banks, they not only get the loan, they get the services to help them succeed. And that's what we need in our community. Education is the key.
Thank you. You're gonna wanna double check your microphone. You're a little muffled, just to make sure it's not covered up and it's functioning well for the next question.
Okay. Yeah, because I didn't hear you about the housing part of my intro. I thought you said just do an intro. So.
Oh, no problem. You'll have plenty of opportunities to share that with us.
Okay.
Yes.
Can you hear me better now?
It's slightly better. Slightly better. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, let me see what's going on. All right. Thank you.
Right. So given how crucial things are in Oakland, and I noticed you guys have some slightly different approaches to what the priorities are in the middle of a pandemic for an already underserved community. And this question goes to you first, Nancy. Are you aware that all of the voting drop-off boxes in East Oakland are pending and non-approved sites? What will you do to help get out the Black vote?
I am out there putting emails out and talking to people in the community and working with them. As to the boxes for voting, we got left out of the loop, and that is something that is being discussed through the supervisors at Nate Miley's office. And I know that Rebecca Kaplan's also been involved in bringing change to that. And we need people to, like I said, if you don't vote, you lose. That's part of Oakland's problem, is people don't vote, and they need to get out and vote, or we will never see the changes that need to be made in order to bring Oakland back to into a position that can move forward. So that being said, this is something that we all need to talk to our neighbors, have them talk to their friends and neighbors and stuff, and make sure that we move forward. I mean, there's a lot of forums that are still going on out here in East Oakland, and we need to outreach through those forums to get the word out that they have to vote and make their voices heard. So I am working on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Same question goes to you, Derek. We're in danger of disenfranchisement. What will you do to help get out the Black vote?
One, we need to have a backup plan. So we have the Coliseum, we have rec centers all throughout East Oakland, we have churches. We need to come together and get, transit, vans from churches, from community-based organizations, and we need to make sure that our people can vote and we have a facility to vote in if boxes do not get put in place, because that is the current administration's plan to make sure that the Black vote and the people that are most vulnerable that really need to vote the most don't. And we need to assure and have a backup plan so that that does not happen.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And finally, Rebecca Kaplan, what will you do to help get out the Black vote?
Yes, thank you so much. It's incredibly important and is actively under attack, both with the vote and with the census for that matter. In terms of the vote specifically, some of the steps I have already taken, I reached out actively to the county registrar over 2.5 months ago and asked them to increase the number of ballot drop boxes in Oakland, particularly in East Oakland. The first map, I think, had 2 for Oakland. So now the additional pending ones are the result of pressure from myself and others on them to go find more, and they have promised that they will do that, and I continue to contact them to push on that. I have also reached out directly to the county and the JPA to open the Coliseum as a safe distance voting site, and they are very far along that logistical planning. They expect to have something within a week to announce in terms of the potential for using the Coliseum site. Also, we're sending out direct messaging to voters about the importance of voting early and using those drop boxes. And we are specifically making sure to outreach in East Oakland, as well as parts of West Oakland, to make sure that people know how they can vote. And every voter is automatically getting a vote by mail ballot in the mail this year. So sharing information about how to fill those out and where to return them is also particularly important this year. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. going to go back to the top now because those voting by mail, receiving a ballot in the mail, it helps when you have a mailbox, things that are attached to houses, right? And everybody needs a place to call home now more than ever. And this question goes to, I apologize. Who was first in the last round?
Nancy, so I think I'm first because I was second.
Okay, yes, exactly. Thank you. I apologize for the slippage, Derek. Now more than ever, everyone needs a place to call home, to vote, to live, to be well. But the private market is failing to meet that need. Do you believe housing is a human right? And what specifically does that mean to you, particularly in the case of Oakland?
I absolutely believe that housing is a human right. And right now, our homelessness in this city is a humanitarian crisis. And I believe that it's the city and state and federal government's job to make sure that every American is housed, especially here in this city. With up to 80% of African Americans, people that look just like me, come from the same neighborhood I come from, entering that population, it not only breaks my heart, it saddens me, and we have to do something about it. That's the main reason why I decided to run. And what we need to do is scale up our relationship with the county, who has that public health money. Kimmy Watkins is the public health director, who is a high school friend of mine. We need to make sure that that relationship is really, really strong. And right now, currently, we don't have strong relationships with each other council member, let alone with other branches of government. So we need to scale up those things. We also need to give resources, and I don't know why we haven't voted on, putting money into homeless organizations like Keep Oakland Housed and Building Futures that are putting people that are actually working but living in their cars and putting them in permanent, sustainable housing, not just band-aiding and putting them in a building or putting them on a ship. None of that is sustainable. We have to put these people and treat them like we would want ourselves treated, like they're our brothers, our sisters, our mothers, our daughters, our family. We have to make sure that we get sustainable and have a program that is going to be sustainable and get them the wraparound services, mental health, and social services that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek. The same question goes to you, Councilperson Kaplan. We need mailboxes to receive ballots to not die from this pandemic. Do you believe that housing is a human right? And what specifically, policy-wise, does that mean to you in a city like Oakland?
Yes, it is absolutely essential that everybody have a right to housing and that we recognize the harmfulness that has been caused by this being treated as a speculation item rather than as a human need. And this is something that I am committed to not only in my words, but in my actions. And that has been part of why I have fought together with so many here to pass the Permanent Affordability Fund as part of the council budget, to fight for inclusionary zoning and impact fees, to fight for the city to acquire out-of-use hotels and dormitories to house people in. And just last week, we completed buying a dorm in Rockridge, which is also important. We need to do this in every part of the city. And every time there has been a proposal that has not taken this need seriously, we have worked to fix that. When we were given the draft of Measure KK, the Oakland Infrastructure Bond, and it had barely any money in it for affordable housing, we worked together to amend that and change it and increase the funding in that for affordable housing. Being serious about this requires working on all the resources, and I'm honored to be endorsed by not only majority of the Oakland City Council, but a majority of the Alameda County supervisors as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate that response. And finally, Nancy, do you believe housing is a human right? And what does that mean to you specifically in a city like Oakland?
Okay, being a landlord and a property owner, I work my tail off for what I have. And my tenants, and Rebecca knows this story really well, my tenants pay me $600 a month. One of my tenants pays me $600 a month, and they raised their own rent on me last year by $50, so now they're paying me $650. My mortgage is $1,300, and that's not counting property taxes and insurance. So I'm doing my fair share, and I have contracts with my tenants. So when it comes to working for a home, that's one thing. But to tell somebody that I have to give away what I have fought my life to earn, I don't live high on the hog. I'm out there helping people consistently, and I give them space to live if they need it. But to tell me that it's a human right, no, not in the sense that I have to give up what I have worked hard to get and other people are just handed it. Oakland's become a welfare state, and that needs to change. People, not everybody that is out there that are homeless cannot work. They have the ability to work, they choose not to. A lot of people are bringing in money that are choosing to live on the streets because they do not want to live and pay rent and stuff. We've allowed that to happen. The unfortunate thing is, it is going to happen even more next April, May, and June. And a lot of people that have property are also going to be losing their homes because they haven't been able to pay their mortgages and stuff. So we have serious problems coming up. And I do have an issue with that. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. So this is, you continue to open the door to my next sets of questions. And this next question, we begin with you, Councilmember Kaplan. Thousands of Oakland renters have lost their incomes due to COVID-19 and the resulting economic crisis, leaving them unable to pay rent. State and local bans on evictions won't last forever, and tenant debt is rising. This puts these households at risk of eviction and creates economic hardships for small owners and affordable housing providers. What policies will you support to provide stability and security for tenants and housing providers as the moratorium comes to an end?
Yes, thank you. There is a huge amount of suffering going on and a real danger of a lot more. And so I think it is important, both what we do at the local level, but also we're going to have to continue to push for statewide action. So at the local level, in Oakland, we did adopt a very strong eviction moratorium. And while people are talking about the cliff at the end of the moratorium in other cities, in Oakland, our moratorium does not allow for an eviction action at the end of that moratorium. So in terms of what is under the local legal jurisdiction to adopt, we have taken pretty strong action, but it's not enough because the financial gap is so much bigger than what any one city could absorb. So even as we have fought for more funding for emergency tenant assistance and to close these gaps, there has been discussion at the state level of creating a program where the state would pay the gap to the small landlords, and then the tenant would pay it back over a period of years. And so even as we work to enforce the protections we do at the local level, we need to continue to fight for a bigger comprehensive solution statewide.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Nancy Sidebotham, same question to you. Thousands of households are at risk of eviction under economic hardships of COVID-19. As well as small owners and affordable housing providers. What specific policies will you support to provide stability and security for tenants and housing providers as the moratorium comes to an end?
Well, I have one tenant that's couldn't pay me rent this month. And I asked her, I said, come April, are you going to be able to pay me $14,000? No. She lived there for a year, a few years ago, because she lost her job when they changed over at the Coliseum and didn't pay me for a year. Did I kick her out? No. So it depends on the individuals you're working with and how greed is there. But I also have to answer to my mortgage people. And nobody's told the mortgage people to stop collecting mortgage payments, and you can add it on to the 30-year or the 20-year or the 15-year and let the homeowners have a chance to breathe. But nobody's done that, but we've told the tenants they don't have to pay rent. So when you're asking what we're going to do about it, you tell me, because I happen to be a landlord who's going to be in a catch-22 position come April, May, and June, when I have to decide whether I can continue to sustain myself. So we have serious problems, and that's a discussion that has to be bigger than just the city council, state and federal. We need to bring redevelopment back that Jerry Brown killed off. We have Oakland Housing Authority. What are they doing, and where's the money coming from them? They've got land in Oakland, and they can use that land to help house people. I mean, there's a lot of discussions that's not being had, and yet we keep pointing fingers to landlords and telling tenants that they don't have to pay rent. And a lot of them aren't going to get their jobs back. So we've got serious problems. This is not something that's going to end in 6 months.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Derek Johnson, with thousands of households and small owners and affordable housing providers at risk as the moratorium comes to an end, what policies will you support to provide stability and security?
I would support protecting renters from eviction. We need to do everything possible to keep people in their homes, including short-term rent subsidies and eviction defense. And we must recognize that impacts of COVID-19 are long-term and that people will continue to need our help beyond the current eviction moratorium. We must honor our city's diversity, bring people from different communities and backgrounds together, and ensure nobody is left behind. And like Nancy said, we also need to look out, current ordinances in Oakland are all very unbalanced. They either serve one group but leave a whole nother group out. We need a balance there. There's a lot of small homeowners, especially in the Black community. I have plenty of family members, including myself, and we are dependent on our rent. And if we don't get the rent, then guess what? Then we don't pay our mortgage. If we don't pay our mortgage, then we get foreclosed on. So it's a cycle that we have to take beyond the city level and adopt on the state level, and even with the feds, and bring these banks to the table and hold them accountable. But we are going to need, we need a people bailout this time. Not a corporate bailout, but the people need to be bailed out. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to shift a little bit as we come to the end of our panel. And this next question begins with you, Nancy. And it's a question about our public lands. Oakland Coliseum is public land with 50% owned by the city. How do you think the land should be used? How would you ensure the Surplus Lands Act is followed there? How will you involve the community in planning and implementing development there?
I think the community needs to be front and forward in all of this. I know that here in East Oakland, that we don't want to see that lost, and we want to make sure that the A's stay there if they choose to stay in Oakland, and that continue to be the Coliseum, that the sports teams that the Black community is looking to bring in here would be a perfect venue for them. But I don't think the land should be sold. I think it should be leased. I don't think public land should be given away. I said, because that's a gold mine for the city of Oakland. And I think that we need to seriously think before we start selling what land we do have, because one of these days we're going to have a serious problem and we're going to have nowhere to turn because we've given it all away and sold it on the cheap. We're on the market that they have it set up for right now. We are selling it or putting it on the market for $85 million. That land is more valuable than that. And both sides are losing. The supervisors in county are losing, and the city of Oakland is going to be losing. And the land needs to be a place where we bring businesses to Oakland. It should be a business park. It's already started to be a business park with Horizon and the Benjamin Paint that have warehouses that have been built down there by UPS and stuff. We have the airport, we have 880, we've got the railroad, we've got BART. High Street to Hagenberger. This is an area we need jobs. We continue to say we're going to train people, but we got no place for them to work. And one of the things that people need to realize is it's great to build housing in that short term, but it doesn't bring money into Oakland. Businesses bring money, sales tax brings money. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. Same question goes to you, Derek. With Oakland Coliseum being public land, 50% owned by the city, how should it be used? How will you ensure the Surplus Lands Act is followed? And how will you involve the community in planning and implementing development there?
Well, one, that's a great question. As we have the last pretty much plot of land right there at the Coliseum, I believe that the land should have, I support a bid. It should all have gone out to bid. Public land should go out to bid. It should not be any back room or backdoor deals. And that land should be used to build affordable housing, low income housing, low income housing, and the lowest of the low, so that the people in East Oakland can stay in our community. We also need to develop an economic center so that we have jobs. My first job was a union job at the Coliseum as an usher. And while everybody else was making I think back then minimum wage was $3 or $2.95 or something like that an hour, I was making close to over $8. So it's really important that we have sustainable and growth opportunity for jobs out at the Coliseum site as well. And we need to also make sure that some of these houses, when we talk about affordable housing, is not just for rental. We need to look at building, moderate to middle income housing so that we can keep Black families that have the money to buy houses in Oakland. And that's why we're being displaced at an unproportional level. It makes absolutely no sense. If the A's do build at Howard Terminal, then they need to make sure that no jobs are lost down there, and that the CBAs, those community benefit agreements, that we actually do, and we hold those developers accountable, and they do what they say they're going to do.
Thank you. Thank you for your response. Councilmember Kaplan, same question to you. Oakland Coliseum is 50% owned by the city. How do you think this land should be used, and how would you ensure that the Surplus Lands Act is followed there? How will you involve the community in planning and implementing development there?
Yes, thank you. It is incredibly important that this large, vital, centrally located, publicly owned site be used in a way that actually benefits and contributes to the community. That means we don't want it to become abandoned blight, but we also don't want it to become something that pushes out East Oakland in order to only let other people thrive. So what does that mean? It means I want there to be development there, and I want it to be development that is in partnership with and serves the community. That includes that we absolutely must have affordable housing on that site. We need to have room for local businesses to thrive. We should have a conference center there, and sports, and the WNBA, and soccer, and restaurants, and we should fix that ridiculous walkway of the chain link monstrosity and have a welcoming open promenade with room along it for shop kiosks. And we should have a requirement of local hiring and local job opportunity. And we need to also make sure that the county does so as well. In Oakland, I have specifically brought the council resolution that did pass, insisting on following the Surplus Lands Act. And I will continue to stand by that. We have to do that.
Thank you, Councilmember Kaplan. I appreciate those comments. Turns out we have a few more minutes than I thought. So I'm going to ask the $65,000 question, beginning with you, Derek Johnson, because it seems like the question is always, where do we get the money? Local funding for affordable housing has been substantially reduced ever since the loss of redevelopment in 2012. What new sources would you pursue to create a permanent funding stream for affordable housing? And would you support reducing a portion of the OPD budget and reallocating those funds for the construction and preservation of affordable housing in Oakland?
So I'll answer your question a little backwards. Yes, I would support repurposing funds from Oakland Police over to housing because it's actually a major need that we have in our city. I think we need to look at our grant writing department and make sure we scale up our grant writers so that we can go after every grant that's state, national, global. I also would upstage and upscale our public-private partnerships. We have the world in our backyard right here in the Bay Area. Why aren't we have more corporations? We had Google give us 12,000 laptops for schools. Why can't we get them to give money to develop 12,000 new units for purchase here at a moderate level? So if we just engage with not only the community, but with our business community here, start running business out of this city, then we would have the resources that we need to accomplish and to eliminate a lot of these issues that are going on in the city today.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Same question goes to you, Councilmember Kaplan. What new sources would you pursue to create a permanent funding stream for affordable housing? And would you support reducing a portion of the OPD budget and reallocating those funds for the construction and preservation of affordable housing in Oakland?
Thank you. Yes, I have fought for and won and would continue to fight for and win dedicated funding sources for affordable housing. That includes the money in Measure KK that we fought for and won, the impact fees that the council passed, and now we are fighting to ensure that they get fully implemented. That includes fighting for ballot measures at the county-wide level that we have advocated for and are continuing to advocate for as well. In addition, yes, we absolutely need to bring back redevelopment. It was an incredibly insulting and wrongful thing to take it away. There was a certain mayor who everything he did in Oakland was funded with redevelopment, and then he went to Sacramento and said, I don't see why cities need that. And so we absolutely need to continue to fight for that at the statewide level. I also want to say a word about regional funding, because we often leave out regional when we talk about like city and county and state. The Bay Area has things like the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and others. And one of the things I've been doing to help fill Oakland's funding needs is fight for funding from there. And I got $50 million from the Air Board to help improve infrastructure and clean up the air in Oakland. And we need to continue to fight for funds at that level as well.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. And finally, Nancy Sidebotham. What new sources would you pursue to create permanent funding streams for affordable housing? And would you support reducing a portion of the OPD budget and reallocating those funds for the construction and preservation of affordable housing in Oakland?
Answer the police issue first. The police department needs to be reorganized and relooked at, but defunding the police for issues, that's something that needs to be studied, and the whole city of Oakland needs to be involved in that study, and that's not just a few handpicked people to be on a public safety committee to come up with an idea by December, which is going to hurt everybody and not have a major discussion, because most of the people in East Oakland do not want to see the police defunded because crime is such a rampant issue throughout the city. When it comes to where the money's going to come from, what we fail to realize is that we are going to be going into a major recession. So talking about all this, the state's already hurting for money. The feds are printing money like crazy, and the paper that is being printed on is not worth anything. We have serious issues out there, and that's what we really need to be looking at. It's great to talk about ideal situations, but the money is not really there. We can come up with ideas. The money is being hoarded by a few men that have managed to make billions and trillions. And those people need to be changed, and how they collect their money needs to be changed, because the workers that are making it for them are the ones that are getting hurt. Just like our teachers in schools, they don't get paid, but the administration is making oodles of money. We need to start changing how that is set up before we can start talking about where our money's coming from, because the government doesn't have it anymore. And we have been paying out and sending all our jobs overseas, and we have nothing here in this country left to draw on. And that's something that needs to be discussed, and has to be a serious discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. I appreciate all of our at-large candidates being here tonight and sharing your vision for Oakland. I'm going to hand it back to Dolores to close us out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Noni, and thank you for that wonderful moderating. And thank you to our panelists for your robust and dynamic answers to our questions. And I just want to close out by saying that we plan to have this recording online for you to see. Check out our EBHO webpage, our elections page in particular. We'll have this recording and all the recordings that we did in the month of September for you to be an educated voter and a voter for housing justice. And thank you and good night.